What you're looking at is thousands of tons of the dirtiest, most toxic fuel on Earth. The stuff every developed country is running away from as fast as its legs can carry it. And China is running straight at it. While the West wrote this fuel off as a relic, a filthy embarrassment from a smoke-choked past, Beijing was quietly building hundreds of plants to turn that black rock into almost anything you can imagine. Clean gasoline for your car, jet fuel, the plastic in your phone case, even the natural gas that burns on your kitchen stove. Same dirty rock, every one of those things. And here's what that bought them. Right now, the Strait of Hormuz is sliding into chaos. Tankers stuck. Global markets panicking over an oil and gas shortage that could hammer every economy on the planet. And Beijing? Beijing isn't sweating, not even a little. Because while everyone else was busy hating this fuel, China built an energy shield out of it, swapping the expensive imported oil the whole world is fighting over for the one resource everyone else was desperate to bury. How did they pull it off? Let's find out. Before we go deeper, if you like stories about how the world is actually being reshaped, the stuff that doesn't make the evening news until it's already too late, hit subscribe. Because what I'm about to show you sounds made up. It sounds like it shouldn't be possible. And it's already running at full capacity. To see it, you have to leave China's gleaming coastal megacities behind and go deep into the arid north and west. Out around Fuxin in Liaoning province, across the vast emptiness of Inner Mongolia and Xinjiang, there's a construction boom happening that almost nobody in the West is watching. Beijing is pouring staggering money into these remote regions. The revival of just one industrial complex ran 25 billion yuan, roughly $3.7 billion, one complex. And the scale doesn't land until you see it with your own eyes. In the middle of barren semi-desert, China is building reactors as tall as apartment blocks. Cooling towers you could lose a stadium inside. Endless mazes of interwoven steel pipelines stretching to the horizon. Thousands of the country's best engineers shipped out to the middle of nowhere. And every official document says the same thing. These plants exist to produce motor fuel, plastics, and sophisticated synthetic chemicals. Here's where it gets insane. To make gasoline or plastic, a chemical plant normally needs one thing above all else: oil. Vast quantities of it. So look closer at these facilities. There are no major oil pipelines running to them. No ports for tankers, no endless freight trains hauling tank cars. The raw material never arrives. It just doesn't show up. Sit with that, plants deep in the continental interior, preparing to pump out millions of tons of fuel and polymers, with no oil supply whatsoever. And these aren't drawings on a whiteboard. They're already running, and the world is already feeling it. Europe got hit hardest, Germany especially. The continent's chemical powerhouse. German giant BASF has already shut down parts of its legendary Ludwigshafen complex, facilities that ran non-stop for decades. Gone. European, Japanese, and South Korean producers can't keep up, and their plants are going dark one after another, because something strange flooded the global market. Extraordinarily cheap Chinese polymers, plastics, synthetic materials of every kind, priced so low they defy economic logic. Western manufacturers ran the numbers and came up baffled. There's no way, they said, to produce these goods, ship them across an ocean, pay the duties, and still sell them this cheap without hemorrhaging money. And here's the paradox that should be impossible. All these chemicals and plastics are traditionally made from oil and gas. Global prices for both stay stubbornly high. Shipping's gotten more expensive. Hormuz is squeezing harder. Expensive raw materials are supposed to mean expensive finished goods. That's why European plants are raising prices just to survive. And at that exact same moment, Chinese producers are cutting theirs. So how does a country drive global petrochemical prices into the ground without cheap oil? The answer's hiding in China's own energy statistics, and it's the greatest misdirection of the decade. Open Beijing's official reports, and the page is practically glowing green. For years, Western analysts gave China a standing ovation, and fair enough, they had reason to. In the first half of 2025 alone, China installed 212 gigawatts of new solar capacity. Let that land. That's more than the entire solar capacity the United States spent decades building. half a year against decades. On paper, China was sprinting into a clean, green future. The charts even showed thermal power plants scaling back, output down 2–3%. European experts exhaled. The era of dirty Chinese smoke, they decided, was finally fading. They were looking in exactly the wrong place, because the moment you check the other records, the whole story collapses. Thermal power looks like it's declining. Oil imports aren't rising to feed the chemical boom. And yet, heavy industry and synthetic fuel output are launching into the stratosphere. A huge, inexplicable hole opens in the balance sheet. Less raw material going in, more finished product coming out. Here's the truth. While the world admired China's wind turbines and solar panels, Beijing was pulling off a masterstroke, using something the West buried long ago and dismissed as junkyard trash: ordinary coal. While the UN issues climate declaration after climate declaration, while European politicians padlock their last mines, China's coal production is smashing every record in history: 4.8 billion tons a year. That is more than half of all the coal mined anywhere on Earth. More than half the planet's coal coming out of one country. But wait, how does that square with thermal power supposedly declining? Now here's the kicker. Beijing figured out something at exactly the right moment. Burning coal just to boil water and spin a turbine for electricity is inefficient, outdated. For clean power, China now has those record-breaking oceans of solar panels. Coal got promoted. It's no longer a fuel for making heat. For modern China, coal became the foundation of an entire chemical empire, a full-scale direct replacement for imported oil. Remember those mystery plants in the desert with no oil pipelines? They weren't dropped in the middle of nowhere by accident. They were built right on top of vast open-pit coal mines. The raw material is literally beneath their feet. No tankers through dangerous straits, no pipelines across a continent. They scoop coal from outside the factory gates and process it on the spot. But how do you turn a lump of dirty black rock into gasoline? Or a plastic wash basin? It sounds like medieval alchemy. It isn't. And the trick is simpler than you'd think. These plants are basically a giant industrial kitchen where molecules get taken apart and reassembled like Lego. It starts with total destruction. Chunks of coal go into enormous steel furnace vessels, and inside, the heat and pressure are so violent, the coal doesn't burn down to ash. It's ripped apart into a transparent cloud of gas. Picture an elaborate Lego castle. Now smash it with your fist until it explodes into a pile of loose bricks. That gas cloud is those bricks, floating in the air. And this is where it gets really interesting. Chinese engineers take that cloud and force the pieces to lock back together, this time to a brand new blueprint. They feed in special substances, catalysts, that make the right atoms bond into new combinations. And it feels like magic. Snap together a short chain, and the gas becomes ultra-clean gasoline or diesel. Build a longer, more complex structure, and out of the pipe pours liquid feedstock for plastic. Same coal-derived gas, shaped into anything they want, like modeling clay. In the West, the assumption was this lab trick would always be too expensive to matter in the real world. Then the International Energy Agency actually sat down and ran the real volumes, and they were stunned. This invisible coal-powered industry is already devouring around 380 million tons of coal every single year. Think about that. An entire mountain of rock, not heating homes, not making electricity, burned solely to churn out plastic and keep cars fueled around the clock. And this isn't a science project or a niche side hustle. Beijing scaled it to maximum and put a major chunk of its national security strategy on a coal-based diet. Start with food, because for China, this is survival. Feeding 1.5 billion people takes oceans of fertilizer, and the foundation of fertilizer is ammonia. Today, China makes 78% of its ammonia from ordinary coal. The black rock beneath their feet is what stands between their people and hunger. Same story with methanol, the key industrial alcohol behind nearly every major chemical plant. 84% of China's methanol now comes from coal. Near total independence. Now look around you. Your phone casing, your keyboard, a plastic bottle, your car's interior, all plastic. Normally, making that plastic starts with oil or gas and pulling out chemical building blocks with names like olefins. But here too, China rewrote the rules. producing more than a third of its plastic feedstock, and over a quarter of those building blocks, straight from coal-derived gas. And here's the part nobody's talking about. Those enormous desert plants weren't built only for plastic and fertilizer. They hide a secret Chinese generals would rather not discuss. Beijing has built a massive strategic military reserve, disguised as ordinary civilian industry. In peacetime, these complexes run in a quiet, low-key mode. Half capacity, harmless products, polymers, alcohols, chemicals for daily life. But the real trick is in how they were designed from day one, around what engineers call the dual-use principle. If things ever turn serious, a real conflict, a naval blockade choking off China's oil, the military won't be staring at empty fuel tanks. Engineers simply reconfigure the lines, and these plants switch to wartime output overnight. Instead of feedstock for plastic bottles, they pump out strategic diesel for tanks and high-grade jet fuel for military aircraft at massive scale. The armed forces get every drop they need without a single barrel of foreign oil. And destroying these plants? Almost impossible. Remember where they sit, deep in the continental interior, ringed by remote steppe and arid desert. No enemy fleet on Earth can physically reach them. Aircraft would struggle to get close. They're the perfect protected rear base for a war. But you didn't seriously think all of this came with no downside, did you? It does. And the price is so steep, China is being forced to sacrifice something it publicly swore to protect. This brings us to Xi Jinping's biggest environmental promise, made to the world and to his own people. China would peak its carbon emissions before 2030 and reach carbon neutrality by 2060. Thousands of experts and politicians are watching to see if he keeps his word. Here's the problem. All that coal chemistry is a filthy business. Breaking solid coal down into liquid fuel means burning huge amounts of extra fuel and consuming colossal energy, releasing several times more CO2 than a conventional oil refinery, several times more. So while China armors its economy against an oil blockade, it's landing a body blow on its own climate goals. Beijing is now trapped in a brutal dilemma: stay the model student the international community loves, or guarantee national security in a real war. And with the world this unstable, the leadership is leaning hard toward the obvious. Sovereignty wins by a landslide, because Beijing reasoned, coldly and correctly, that if aircraft carriers ever shut the sea lanes, UN approval won't keep a single tank moving or a single factory running. But promises on the world stage are one thing. Are emissions really the only downside here? Of course not, because this industry is water hungry on a scale that's hard to even picture. Check the brutal math. To produce a single ton of gasoline or diesel, a plant burns through 6 to 10 tons of clean fresh water. For cooling reactors, running the conversion, washing the raw material, cut off the water, and this whole industrial machine grinds to a halt overnight, a mountain of useless metal. And here, geography dealt China a cruel hand. Its biggest coal reserves and those massive plants sit in the north and west, in Xinjiang, Shaanxi, Inner Mongolia, regions that are, to put it gently, bone dry. Deserts and steppe where fresh water has always been precious. It's a bizarre dead end. Enormous coal exactly where there isn't a drop to spare, while most of the country's water runs through the south, where there's almost no coal. But Beijing doesn't surrender to nature. If the north has no water, then water gets brought to the north, whatever it costs. So China launched a colossal project to divert water from south to north. Engineers are literally redrawing the country's hydrological map, boring tunnels through mountains, building giant pumping stations, laying thousands of miles of concrete canal to drag entire rivers toward the coal plants. And China is already paying for that lifeline. In the humid south, where the water's taken from, reservoirs and waterways are starting to shrink and farmers are suffering. In the arid north, hazardous industrial wastewater is piling up around the plants, poisoning soil that was fragile to begin with. And even those enormous sacrifices don't fully cut China loose from the Persian Gulf, because there's one more resource it needs from that region: natural gas. While China was moving its cars to electric and its factories to coal, its appetite for energy just kept climbing. Its industries and megacities need staggering amounts of gas, and some of it arrives as liquefied natural gas on giant tankers, along those same vulnerable sea routes with the Middle East as a major supplier. Any flare-up around Hormuz instantly threatens the gas keeping China's cities lit. But surely you didn't think Beijing would just sit there. They pulled the same coal trick again. A massive state program with a blunt name: coal to gas. The logic is simple. If you can turn coal into gasoline, why not into methane? The very same natural gas in kitchen stoves and power plants. Beijing rolled out an enormous build-out, and right now, 13 gigantic gasification plants are being pushed to full capacity. At 100%, they'll produce 1.8 trillion cubic feet of synthetic gas a year, enough to cover as much as 12% of China's total annual gas demand. Now compare that to the Persian Gulf, the very dependence Beijing is trying to break. Take Qatar, a gas superpower, one of the world's top LNG exporters. Qatar, with its entire fleet of supertankers, supplies China with roughly 988 billion cubic feet of gas a year, an enormous critically important contract. Now look at this. The synthetic gas China learned to make at home from black lumps of coal is nearly twice that entire Qatari contract. Twice. And to get it, they need fewer tense international negotiations and fewer massive port terminals. So, does that mean China can just lean on coal and shrug off imported oil and gas? Of course not, which is exactly why they're pushing on other fronts too. And this is where the story stops being just about coal. China is producing synthetic jet fuel quite literally from water and air. Specialized facilities pull carbon dioxide straight out of the atmosphere, split hydrogen out of ordinary water by electrolysis, then fuse the two into kerosene chemically identical to conventional aviation fuel. No modified engines. Fill the tank, take off. Why bother? Partly their own use, and partly a guaranteed market. In 2025, the European Union mandated that sustainable fuel make up at least 2% of all aviation fuel, rising to 70% by 2050. China's getting there first, ready to sell European airlines this fuel long before it's cheap to make. Then there's cryogenic energy storage, frozen air. Lithium batteries store power for only 4 or 5 hours and lean on scarce lithium and cobalt. China's alternative: take ordinary air, chill it to minus 317 degrees Fahrenheit until it condenses into liquid. When the grid needs power, heat the liquid air fast. It expands 750-fold, driving turbines and generating electricity. That system can supply power for more than 10 hours with a supply chain free of rare metals. And then hydrogen. The problem is moving it. It's light and volatile, so shipping pure hydrogen is difficult and brutally expensive. China's answer is green ammonia as the carrier, since it's far easier to store and transport as a liquid, making it used to demand natural gas and huge energy. But plants in Shaanxi province cracked it, synthesizing ammonia at room temperature without a single drop of natural gas. And the scale-up is striking. In 2019, China made 23,000 tons of green hydrogen. By 2024, 125,000 tons. Beijing also locked down the equipment. China now holds 65% of the global market for electrolyzers, the machines that split water into hydrogen and oxygen. And the clearest sign they're deadly serious. Hydrogen is now written into the country's national energy law, on the same legal footing as oil and gas. For private investors, that was a starting gun, triggering a 33 billion yuan wave of investment. I want to be straight with you here, because this is where those other channels lie to you and get themselves nuked. This is not a clean win, and China has not beaten anyone yet. The coal chemistry route is genuinely dirty, several times the CO2 of a normal refinery, and it directly undercuts the very carbon promises Beijing made on the world stage. The water cost is real, and it's already hurting people. Shrinking reservoirs in the south, contaminated soil in the north. Coal to liquids only makes economic sense when oil prices stay high. If crude crashes, a lot of this math gets ugly fast. That synthetic gas covers 12% of demand, real but not independence. The green hydrogen numbers, 125,000 tons, are a rounding error next to China's total energy hunger, impressive growth, tiny base. And the West isn't standing still. BASF is bleeding, yes, But the US, Germany, and Japan still hold serious cards in advanced chemistry and refining. This is a country turning a weakness into a weapon at enormous cost, not a finished victory lap. But sit with the core of it anyway, because that's the part that should keep you up at night. Everybody was watching the wrong hand. The whole world clapped for the solar panels and the wind turbines and the green charts, the magic trick you were supposed to see. And while you were clapping, the other hand was quietly turning the dirtiest rock on the planet into fuel, plastic, fertilizer, and a wartime fuel reserve buried so deep in the desert no navy on Earth can touch it. They didn't hide the coal because they were ashamed of it. They hid it because it was the plan. The future everyone imagined was clean, electric, green. The future that's actually arriving runs, in part, on a black rock the rest of us swore we were done with. It's already here. It's already running at full capacity. And most of the world still hasn't noticed. So here's my question for you. When the fuel of the future turns out to be the fuel of the past, is that China outsmarting everyone? Or is it a warning about the price the rest of us aren't willing to pay yet? Tell me in the comments. I read them. And if this changed how you see what's coming, subscribe, because the next one is going to be even bigger.